Given that probably many of you here are sort of thinking, well, how am I going to do this? Could you tell us what, how you think maybe the situation is different nowadays than when you had your first international sale? I know you sort of both touched on that a little bit. And also maybe talk about what role an agent plays in all of this. Maybe I can go first.
Well, e-books have changed everything, of course, and not necessarily in a good way. I mean, e-books enables anybody now to get their book published, which is good for people who actually are prepared to go through all the steps that a publisher normally does in preparing your book for publication. In other words, editing it rigorously, proofreading it, designing a good and appropriate cover, some of the time, doing all the promotion necessary to get it in booksites, in bookshops, or on the appropriate websites where the retailing it. So there are a lot of things that a publisher provides for an author, which authors usually don't do themselves if they self-publish, partly because they don't have an independent view of what the quality of their book is and where the flaws are, and partly because it actually costs quite a bit of money to do all of this. And I don't know how much time one of my editors spends on editing my books, but I can't imagine it would be any less than, say, 100 hours. And 100 hours, even at the miserable rates that contract authors get, say $50 an hour, you can see that's a lot of money. That's $5,000. It doesn't need editing. So if you're a self-published author and you're going to spend $5,000 getting a good, experienced editor to edit your books, the people who really want to succeed have the money to do it. Most people don't. So the problem is, in a nutshell, 10 years ago, there was, say, in the US, there was something like 180,000 book titles published a year when they were print books. Now the number of book titles published a year is something like 2 million. So you can see, even if most of those 2 million are self-published books and they're only selling 10 or 15 copies on average, it's still cannibalising a significant part of the potential for book sales, because that's 10 copies times 2 million books is a lot of books. It's a lot of money going away that people don't have the money to buy your books. So but the other thing it's doing is it's making it incredibly difficult to be seen and to be heard. Because everybody is out there desperately trying to gain attention with blogs and Twitter and Facebook pages and every other form of podcast, every other form of self-promotion I can think of. But how do you make yourself visible when there are 2 billion people out there? And it is really, really hard. I know a fair bit about self-promotion. It's something I've been interested in for a long time. And I've invested a lot of time learning it, but it's still really, really difficult to get heard. And I think I've probably gone completely off the topic, Dirk, but... agent, yeah.
No, I mean, we're still on the topic because the whole e-book thing didn't exist just a few short years ago, so it has changed things.
It's changed things dramatically. My agent is Selwyn Anthony, who is one of the best agents in Australia, if not the world. And my original series, I didn't have an agent. I sold it to myself, and then I sort of, when I rang up Selwyn and said, I've got a book deal for Penguin, would you like to be my agent? And in that situation is almost never yes. Julianne.
Yeah, well, you've said a lot of what I might have said about ebooks. Just on the reverse side of it, remembering that the ebook explosion and phenomenon is not all about self-publishing, although it certainly has made it a lot easier for people to self-publish. But those of us who are already established writers obviously are now having our stuff published both in print editions and in ebook editions, and there's a great advantage, I think, in the fact that those are both available, because so many people are using e-readers these days, and I have found that accessibility of my books internationally has increased for people now that they're available in ebook editions. For a lot of established authors who perhaps have quite a long list of books that they've written and where the earlier ones have gone out of print, it's now much easier to have what's called your backlist back in print. If you buy your rights back, you can actually then put your old books out there again as ebooks, promote yourself, and a lot of people have done very well through that. They've managed to get those books back in print, so that's a good thing. Just a couple of other things, because it was a sort of a general question, wasn't it, about how things have changed.
Yeah.
As a mainstream published author, I've noticed a couple of things. One of them was with the global economic downturn, publishers became a lot more cautious in what they would buy. Whether that still applies or whether it's swinging back up, I don't know. I think perhaps we've got a buoyant economy in Australia, so maybe our publishers are less like that. But certainly in the States, publishers became very wary about taking on anything that they were not fairly confident would sell well. And so I, in particular, was tentatively channeled into the thing they want is a series. The thing they want is a series which is the kind where you get to the end of book one and the readers are desperate to buy the second one, so they need to be sure that that it's going to be a good seller for years, and sort of safe stuff like something that's similar to what has sold well for you in the past. So that was certainly sort of 3 or 4 years back that I was under that kind of pressure, but certainly that was what I heard via my agent. And certainly here in Australia, publishers are feeling the squeeze of the changing times and the change to digital technology. And one thing I've noticed is that there's less in the budget for doing publicity and promotion for their authors. So in the early days when I started, a lot was done for me. A lot of media was set up. A lot of opportunities to go out and sign and meet people. And with my American publisher, in fact, a grand American signing tour, which I did with Sarah Douglas and an American author, Jacqueline Carey. The Whistle Stop tour of the cities and stuff. That was back in 2001, and that just wouldn't happen now. It wouldn't be offered, certainly not for someone like me who's not in the sort of top echelons of famous writers. So less money, therefore writers have to do a lot more of their own self-promotion, the stuff that Ian was talking about, blogging, getting out there, guest blogging, being in social media, just making yourself known to your readers in all sorts of ways. So it doesn't matter whether you're self-published or published by a small press or by a big publishing house, you now have to get out and do a lot more of that. And it doesn't come naturally to a lot of writers. A lot of them, like me, would much rather be at home writing the book in the quiet surrounds and not, so I'm very happy to be here today because this is a super event and a very receptive audience, but, that kind of stuff is not necessarily part of what the writerly personality is. Yeah, okay, what was the other thing? The agent. I didn't acquire an agent until I had already had my first 5 books published. I was dealing directly, as I said, with Pan Mill in Australia. They were doing the international sales for me. So at a certain point, the American business got complicated and I decided I really had better have an agent. And I signed up with Russell Galen, who is in the Scoville at Galen and Bosch agency in New York, which has a very, very good reputation for publishing, for representing writers of speculative fiction. And I was having a chat about him earlier. I think there are two kinds of agents. I think one is the one who will do all the business, the hard business stuff for you and get out there. They'll all get out there and do the business stuff and make the contacts and go to book fairs. And some of them will also hold your hand through the writing and redrafting process and give you artistic advice and so forth. Mine doesn't do that. He told me that up front. He does the business. He does the tricky stuff. So if you're in the fortunate position, as I was, of actually being able to choose between a few agents, you need to know what sort of relationship you want with your agent, what you want them to do for you and with you. But I would agree with Ian that an agent is, worth his or her weight involved in terms of what they can do for you. And yes, the difficulty is actually getting in with your first book. Mind you, if the first book you write, or if the book you write that you're going to put out there is wonderful, if it's very strong, if it's fabulous and original and well written, then the agent will want to pick it up because it's going to make money for them, and they're excited by you and they're excited by your book, so it can certainly happen.